Prepare yourself for the terror. The prison of madness, where few enter and none return.
Welcome to Unsung Horrors. With Lance. And Erica.
Leave all your sanity behind. It can't help you now.
Welcome to another episode of Unsung Horrors. I'm Erica.
I'm Lance.
And this is a special bonus episode. This is our third Blu-ray wishlist episode.
Yes.
Where we basically put it out in the universe, a list of movies that we would like to see get a Blu-ray, or, we can go 4K if we want. We're in that world now.
That's true.
Movies that we want to see get a proper release. We'll also be including what distribution label we think should put it out, as well as some accompanying special features. And we always like to have a guest for this. And joining us this episode, we have Brian Saur from the Pure Cinema podcast and the Just the Disc podcast and YouTube channel. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thrilled to have you. Huge fan of Pure Cinema for a long time. Avid watcher of the Just the Disc channel.
So nice of you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a I don't know if I can call myself a collector, because I feel like collector means like you get not everything, but I buy what I want.
Right.
But I think having channels like yours, and like our we're going to have some bonus picks after our segment here. We've got Ryan from Disconnected and Celeste Lacabre sharing 5 of their picks as well. So folks should definitely stick around for that.
That is fantastic. I love both of those folks and their channels and everything they do for the physical media community. They're great.
Absolutely. And so having channels like that really helps me decide if I want to buy something or not.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
not always an impulse buyer.
No, you know what? I respect that. In fact, I've had conversations with some other YouTube folks and just people in the community, and the idea that there's this sort of intense pressure to get everything, like there's this whole legion of Vinegar Syndrome folks. And I love Vinegar Syndrome. I'm a subscriber, everything. But this idea that like you just have to get it and put it on the shelf and then it seems like a lot of people don't watch this stuff. So like that to me is like kind of a bummer. It's like collecting to collect. Whereas what you're doing is obviously collecting to watch and to curate your personal collection of movies. And I think is much more, I don't know. It's difficult because it's easy to just, well, it's not easy if you don't have the money, but if you have the money to buy everything, to just buy everything, I'm like, that's not interesting to me. And I don't know. So I respect that.
Yeah, for sure. I want to give some updates on our previous Blu-ray wishlist episodes, because since we've done one of these each year, and since the last couple episodes that we did, there have been some Blu-ray releases or announcements that have come out for movies that we've talked about on these specific episodes. So from our first wishlist episode, where John was our guest, one of his picks was Evil Dead Trap, and that has since gotten a release from Unearthed Films. One of our listener picks, because before that episode, and I'm sorry, I forgot to do that for this episode. I didn't ask listeners what their picks were. I'm a bad host sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. We have a lot of guests that are.
We got a lot going on this one. But we had a listener pick from Jordan, and he wanted a release of The Abyss, which at that time just seemed impossible because Jim Cameron was busy making more avatars. But since then, he has said that there will be a 4K release, according to him. So that's been announced. And then just this week, Indicator, coming out hot, announced a box set of Mexican horror movies, 2 of which I had on my box set wish list. The Black Pit of Dr. M, which we had our episode with Abraham, and The Witch's Mirror. And I am immediate pre-order. This is one where I didn't have to wait to check Brian's channel or Ryan or Celeste. I was like, immediate pre-order. So
yeah, no, that's very exciting that Indicator's doing, like, between that Michael J. Murphy set and now this one, like, really interesting horror box sets. I love it. I mean, not that they haven't done it before with the Warren box set. I'm trying to remember.
Oh, Norman J. Warren
box set, which was great. But I love seeing them venture into the horror box sets.
Yeah, especially ones that are really I mean, underseen for sure. Norman J. Warren, the Mexican Gothic horror, and Michael J. Murphy. I'm super stoked on it. I also pre-ordered the other one, the Indicator announced too, because I got to have If Footmen Tire You, What Will Horses Do in high def, because that is just a dream.
Nice.
Okay, and then from our second wish list episode, Dustin had on his wish list a box set for the Ju-On or Grudge series, and I pretty quickly after that episode came out, Arrow announced their box set, so he got his wish. And then one of the movies that I picked for a Cat 3 box set, Run and Kill, is getting a release from Air 4444 sometime this year. I'm not exactly sure. Probably second half of the year would be my guess for that. So we've got a good track record here, folks. We're going to try and get a few more out into the world for you. We each have 5 picks. We'll go round robin style, and I will just go ahead and kick it off here.
Okay.
So my first pick is Rocker from 1972. I'm starting with my biggest long shot here because this one would require music rights from the Rolling Stones, Elvis, Led Zeppelin, Carlos Santana, and probably a few others. So
Oh dear.
huge long shot. I mean, but you never know. If you put stuff out in the universe, you may just get what you want. So Rocker from 1972 is directed by Klaus Lemke. From what I read about it, it was a German TV movie. It takes place in Hamburg, and it seems to be very specific to this city or region. It's part slice of life, part biker movie, but not quite biker exploitation, and part coming of age in a way. There's a thin plot about a boy getting a biker gang to help him get revenge for his brother's death. It's pretty raw. It's like a film by a cult director early in their career that they made with friends, but he had been making films for 7 or 8 years at this point. So I think that's just his style, is extremely raw and really focusing on this type of people, like what most might call like, the sort of lowbrow crowd, like bikers and sex workers and things like that. So Lemke actually died fairly recently in July of 2022. So one of the special features that I thought would be great is either some kind of new mini documentary about his career, or the disc could simply include Champagne for the Eyes, Poison for the Rest from 2022, and or Bad Boy Lemke from 2020, both of which are him reflecting on his career himself. I think it would be great to have interviews with any cast and crew of Rocker. And maybe even, I after kind of digging around a little bit, I found this other German director, Dominik Graf, who has said a lot of great things about him. So maybe an interview with him talking about the influence that he had. Lemke also has some short films from 1965 to 1966, which you could probably lump all together on an extra disc in the set. I'm putting a lot of stuff on here because I'm like, if you're going to get the music rights for Rolling Stones and Elvis, like go all out with your special features. So maybe even a bonus movie on this, 3 Minuten Heroes from 2005, because that one also takes place in Hamburg. So sort of adjacent to this one. As far as which label, this one was kind of tough, but I did ultimately land on Radiance because I think this kind of fits squarely with their run of foreign films. I think it would kind of fit into their aesthetic. But in the meantime, for folks, if you do want to watch it, it's on Cave of Forgotten Films, rarefilm.com with 2 M's. So Rocker 1972 is my first pick.
Nice.
Very cool.
Brian, what's your first pick?
Okay, I'm going to go 50s sci-fi for my first pick. It's pretty straightforward in terms of where it would go because Criterion put out the DVD. The movie's called Fiend Without a Face from 1958. It's a fun, kind of silly sci-fi movie about flying brains that attack people and choke them to death. And it's got Marshall Thompson in it. And it's just something about this one that I've always found really amusing and interesting. And it's just kind of stuck with me for a long time. And I don't think maybe it was streaming on the Criterion channel for a little while. It may still be for all I know, but it doesn't seem to be widely available streaming. So I don't think a lot of people are watching it nowadays. But I don't know. I just think it's a blast. Criterion upgrade would be great. And this is one thing that kind of shocks me about Criterion, that Everybody else has gotten on the Kim Newman train, like he's all over Imprint, he's all over Arrow, Shout Scream Factory's used him.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite, people to do commentary. I just find him incredibly entertaining and so knowledgeable. So it's shocking to me that I don't think he showed up on a Criterion disc yet, but I could be wrong. But I'd love to hear this is just the perfect kind of Kim Newman-y kind of movie that I would love to hear him talk about. So a Kim Newman commentary would be a nice, addition to this one.
Love it. Criterion, hear our call.
Hell yes.
All right, Lance, first pick.
Okay, my first pick is Gordon's War from 1973.
The pusher and the junkie are an invading army, and they've turned Harlem into a battlefield. We've been in a war before, and we're gonna do this just like we did it in the NAM. We've been trained in the fire. Yeah, it's a shitty business, but we're experts. We are gonna drive those bastards out.
It's war, baby. It's Gordon's War.
So this one I need to point out, it was included on a DVD double feature release back in 2011, paired up with Off Limits from 1988, starring Willem Dafoe. I've never seen that.
Oh, okay.
But that release had no special features, and I think Gordon's War deserves a Blu-ray release with extras. It's directed by Ossie Davis, obviously a well-known actor, a lot of Spike Lee joints, Do the Right Thing, School Days, Malcolm X. Of course, he played JFK in Bubba Hotep, Don Cascarelli's. He's a very recognizable actor. Some people may not know his name, but his work as a director is like very strong. I first watched one of his films as a director about 3 years ago called Black Girl, Your Girl. I think also deserves a Blu-ray release. That's not out there. But I was captivated when I first watched that movie by his filmmaking. And since then, I've watched a few of his other directed films. Gordon's War is my favorite. And I was surprised that it didn't have a Blu-ray release. There's one, he did another film called Cotton Comes to Harlem.
Banger.
Yeah, totally. And that was released by Kino back in 2014. So Gordon's War, I think it's definitely a banger. Cotton Comes to Harlem, but Gordon's War is, woof. Anyway, it's about a couple of Vietnam buddies essentially cleaning up Harlem on their own after the police won't do anything about it. They're handling, the drug dealers, how it's affecting the community. They use tactics that they learned from the war. It has an amazing cast: Paul Winfield, Carl Lee, Tony King, David Downing. Grace Jones has a small role in it. But, sadly, most of the cast members and crew members have passed away, including Paul Winfield, who plays Gordon. So I guess for special features and audio commentary wouldn't really be possible. But maybe a commentary from a historian and professor like Claiborne Carson, who was a friend of Ossie Davis. He was born and raised in New York. He was involved in a lot of anti-Vietnam War protests. Insight like that into the film, I think, for Gordon's War would be really interesting to watch and listen to. But yeah, not only having a cleaned up version of it, maybe an in-depth look into Ossie Davis's career and life, I think would be amazing. Not only as an actor, but focusing more on his work behind the camera as a director. Given the race relations that he tackles in all the films he's directed, he was a well-known civil rights activist, along with his wife, actress Ruby Dee. They were both personal friends of Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X. Ossie Davis actually gave the eulogy at Malcolm X's funeral, which would be interesting. So a mini documentary on Ossie Davis would be awesome to include with Gordon's War. And the original soundtrack is a banger.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, so maybe something to break down the music. They're in special features. The songs were written and performed by a funk group called Badder Than Evil with Angelo Badalamenti.
Oh, wow. Shit.
Yeah. So, I think breaking that, how that relationship and how that music came about would be really, really insightful and interesting to learn about. Some of the music has been sampled by Public Enemy and Cold Cut since then. Maybe give a digital download of the full soundtrack or something, because you can't really find it on streaming services. But yeah, I think as far as who could release it, I think Ossie Davis's work deserves the Criterion treatment based on his history, much like the Melvin Van Peebles set that they did a few years ago. I could see Deaf Crocodile handling a release like this too, with their awesome Solomon King release recently. But I would go Criterion to really focus in on Ossie Davis and his career and civil rights activism and stuff.
Very nice.
Gordon's War. I think it's on YouTube right now.
Okay.
I have that. I literally have that DVD set downstairs on a pile next to where I do my YouTube videos because I've been meaning to watch it.
Oh, the double feature?
Yeah, it's Gordon's War, and what's the other one? I can't remember.
Off Limits.
Off Limits, that's right.
Yeah.
I picked that up when I saw Justin LaLiberty from OCN and Vinegar Syndrome. He's a big fan of that one, and I hadn't seen it for whatever reason, but I haven't gotten a chance to check it out yet, so I got to get it going, definitely.
Nice. Yeah, it's great. All that stuff is really good.
Watch listed. No, I'm going to wait for the Blu-ray.
Yeah, there you go.
No, actually, no. I'm going to watch it because the second I watch it on a shitty copy on YouTube, it'll get a release.
Yeah. Make it happen, Erica. Watch it.
I will.
Yeah, I think, Lance, you're right. It does deserve Criterion, but this one has the vibe. I mean, Shout Factory put out that double disc set.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think based on what they've been doing in terms of the website exclusive releases. I'm not sure if they would put it out again, but they might. But the other thing would be Kino would pick up a movie like that. It's in the wheelhouse of because I feel like they put out Cotton Comes to Harlem and years ago now,
Mm-hmm.
But Criterion would be the ideal for sure. But my point being is it feels like that one could happen from somebody,
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think it will.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
And to be clear, when we circle back to the ones that did get a release, we're not holding ourselves to which ones release it. We're just saying somebody, but here's who we think.
Well, I feel like I'm due as well, because when you just circled back on all our past episodes, none of my picks were included there.
And I'm still very upset we have not gotten our Demon Lover Diary double disc set, folks. Come on.
That's got to be in the works. Like that just feels like a Vinegar Syndrome gimme or something.
Exactly,
yeah. Somebody's working on that. I swear somebody's working on that. I don't have any information, but I just can't believe that's not in the works somewhere.
That's got to be. All right. Second pick. Heading to Japan. My next pick is Agi, The Fury of Evil from 1984, directed by Hikari Hayakawa. So, quick synopsis. During a night of drinking, a samurai jokingly says that he would cross this cursed bridge called Agi Bridge, but he doesn't have a suitable horse. So then word gets back to the Lord, who offers him his horse, which is apparently the best in the province. Despite having the best horse, the samurai is killed by a demon, or Oni, on his journey. And this leads to the rest of the warriors to also visit the bridge and seek vengeance on his behalf. It's a very simple plot in that sense, but this is very much a fantasy movie. I'm going to call it this. It is a samurai horror fantasy sword and sandal movie. That's a lot, but it's got a very dreamy atmosphere, gorgeous shots, and some of the best gore effects that I have seen in a very long time in a new to me film, especially with the demon and in the last 20 minutes or so. It uses a lot of classical music scores throughout the film, which oddly work very well with this, especially the Flight of the Valkyries sequence, which I don't want to give too much away about. So this desperately needs a restoration because the only copy you can find now is a VHS rip you can find it on either YouTube or Archive. And they're both, the rips are both from the same guy. And after I reviewed it, the guy who did the version that I watched actually commented and said he went back and tried to clean it up even more. And he re-uploaded it again on YouTube and Archive. I went back and looked, and it is better, but it's still really hard to see a lot of what makes this movie really great. So I'm not going to tell folks to go out and watch it because it's not terrible, it's watchable, but you're losing out on the full effect of it. So I'll put a link in show notes in case people do want to watch it, but just don't say I didn't warn you. So special features for this. The director is still alive, so I would love a commentary from him about this. Maybe some kind of video essay about the Japanese demon, the Oni, and maybe their portrayal in films throughout history. The director also has some made-for-TV short films. One is called Evil Heart from 1985. That one's about 35 minutes, and it also already has a 10-minute making-of documentary to go with it. And then another short film was Momoko Wonderland's Strange House from 1986. That one's about 45 minutes. So think you could include both of those short films on there. Interviews with cast and crew. None more listed on IMDb, and I couldn't read the credits, so I don't know who they are. So someone would have to do some digging for that. Making a video essay on Onis, get those made for TV shorts on there, and a commentary by the director. Given the type of film this is and that it's Japanese, I think Third Window would be a really great pick for someone to put this out. So that's Augie, the Fury of Evil from 1984.
Okay.
Brian, next pick.
I love me some Animal Attack movies. I have like a whole section of Blu-rays in my house, just all Animal Attacks. And this one I saw originally on a Warner Archive DVD, which is the only way to see it at the moment. I don't think it's streaming anywhere. Don't think it's on YouTube in any form. It is called The Beasts Are on the Streets. It's from 1978.
Please stay in your cars. The animals are dangerous. Stay in your cars until you have received further instructions. The animals are dangerous. Keep your windows rolled up at all times.
It is directed by Peter R. Hunt, who weirdly is more associated with the James Bond franchise because he was the editor of like Dr. No and From Russia with Love and Goldfinger and even, Bond adjacent, the Ipcris File. But he also directed, I want to say he directed On Her Majesty's Secret Service. So he did do his own Bond movie. But yeah, so he directed this movie, which is strange, but it's an interesting one. I want to say, I can't remember if it's set near like San Diego or something, but it feels like California. And the idea is basically that you don't see these a lot anymore, but there used to be these wild animal parks. I would imagine they closed some of these down because it just seems like a lawsuit waiting to happen, really. But the idea is that you'd have the animals it's not a zoo. It's like they're behind fences, in this case, pretty flimsy chain link fences. And you just drive through on a little tram and the, zoo employees give you like sort of a tour. And so this particular wild animal park has all manner of animals, lions and tigers and elephants and giraffes and ostriches. And you have basically a setup where some sort of rednecky hunter type dudes coming back from a hunting trip see this truck driver he's having some issues. Like he's supposed to be on some kind of medication or something. I don't know, but they decide to mess with him. And one of the guys like just takes his rifle out and just points it at the guy and basically gives him a near heart attack, and the guy, ends up pulling off the road, but ultimately he gets in an accident where he tears down a good section of the outer fence of this wild animal park. And so the animals first get loose on the freeway, which is crazy. And then they get loose in some suburban neighborhoods. So you have just like a tiger loose in somebody's house. And it's just one of those movies that's pretty nuts. Like unfortunately, like I'm a very pro animal safety kind of person. And I can't speak to exactly how safe this might or might not have been. It seems like maybe some of the animals could have been injured in this movie. But not in a way that, we're not talking like Italian cinema kind of stuff here. It's hopefully relatively minor injuries, if any. But anyway, I just love this idea. People on the freeway in just parking lot traffic, and suddenly they've got a tiger like jumping up on the side of their car. Just crazy stuff. It's a really fun cast. It's got Carol Lindley, Billy Greenbush, and Philip Michael Thomas from Miami Vice are the most recognizable people. But there's definitely some other folks in here that you'll probably recognize. But yeah, this was just a movie I'd never heard of. And when the Warner Archive DVD came out, I was like, what is this? And it's really become sort of a favorite of mine. It's just like in that perfect 70s disaster movie, Animal Attack, prime era. And it just really works for me. So, I'd love to see a Blu-ray. Obviously Warner Archive mostly does their own upgrading. Mm-hmm. So realistically, they would probably be the ones to do it. But if they licensed out, I could see Kino maybe doing this because Kino's done some TV movies and actually done some really cool stuff with those. And, we talked about Amanda Reyes as a great commentator for TV movies. She's like the expert. So I got to have an Amanda Reyes commentary on this. It's just a must. Absolutely. I'm pretty. I don't know. I wish I could be more elaborate with my special feature. But it's, to me, a good commentary really goes a long way. That's kind of like one of my ideal things. I do like video essays. I do like little mini docs and things like that. Those are great. But I'm just looking at the cast and the director, and almost nobody's left alive that could come. I feel like Michael Thomas might still be alive. I wonder what he would remember from this. So maybe an interview with him would be interesting. But I think almost everybody else in the primary cast might no longer be with us, and the director's no longer with us. So, but yeah, director, to hear Peter Hunt talk about this movie would be, pretty neat if it was possible. So anyway, yeah, Beasts Are on the Streets from 1978.
Love it. Love a good animal attack movie for sure.
Nice.
One of my favorite subgenres. All right, Lance, next pick.
Okay. I'm going with Deranged from 1987.
That doesn't have a Blu-ray yet?
So this is not the 1974 Deranged with
I know
Ed
what you're talking
Gein.
about, yeah.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have a Blu-ray.
Oh, shit. Oh, I thought it, okay.
This is the Deranged that's directed by Chuck Vincent, who's probably most famous for his X-rated adult films, which, he directed dozens and dozens over a decade in the 70s into the mid-80s. He was noted as one of the more sophisticated filmmakers in the adult industry. But he started working in horror and thrillers, and Deranged is a movie I watched last year, mainly due to its leading actor, Veronica Hart, who, she's in one of your favorites, Erica, Bloodsucking Pharaohs in Pittsburgh.
Stop bringing that movie up.
We did a full early episode on that movie, and I think that's the lowest rated movie from Erica that we covered. Yeah. Yeah, you did not like it at all.
No.
I loved it.
You keep bringing it up too. God, can we move on?
That should be a Blu-ray release. I do have the DVD, but
okay.
But anyway, Hart, she was also an adult film actress. Actually, most of the cast in Deranged worked in adult films, which is fascinating in and of itself. But she had worked with Chuck Vincent quite a bit before this, and she was cast to play the lead in Deranged. And she's basically in every scene. It's pretty much a single location movie about a pregnant woman who is attacked by a masked intruder in her apartment, and she kills him and begins having this nervous breakdown immediately afterwards, and just having these weird visions and hallucinations. It's very psychologically heavy as she struggles to kind of determine what's real. She relives these childhood traumas and issues in her relationships, like with her husband and stuff, who's out of the picture. They're still married, but obviously this is just her in her apartment, which is just kind of amazing to watch. And she plays crazy and going out of her mind extremely well. And Chuck Vincent, the director, he does these long takes. I'm talking like 8 minutes or so. So while it's low budget, you can see all the preparation and the camera work, the framing, specifically the performance from Hart and all the emotion she puts in it. So I think a special feature with interviews or a commentary from Veronica Hart would be really interesting. It's like this incredibly involved role from her. So hearing her talk through the scenes that, these long take scenes and probably all the rehearsal she did, I think would be very cool. And the director, Chuck Vincent, he had an interesting career. He started out very young doing behind the scenes stuff as a set designer and stage manager in regional theater and off Broadway. He was openly gay, which was strange in the adult industry when he would film just straight hardcore, porno movies. He sadly passed away at a young age in 1991. So I think having like a short documentary or breakdown of his career as a filmmaker in both adult and other genres would be cool to see, to learn more about him and his films. But I could see Vinegar Syndrome releasing this, maybe opening up some releases to other, Chuck Vincent directed films, including some of his adult titles. But I think that would be a good fit.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
All right. My third pick is The Walled In from 1969, directed by, and I will butcher this, I apologize, directed by Vojislav Rakonjak. He is the director from the former Republic of Yugoslavia. So the film is about a friendship that develops between an inmate and a guard. So it starts off with them being very antagonistic. The prisoner tries to break out, but he gets caught. And so then they end up in a situation where the guard is pretty much assigned to keep an eye on him. And so the film is primarily focused on the two of them and their sort of developing friendship. We also get some back history about the guard, which is revealed later in the film, and that kind of impacts his behavior. So it's an interesting film because it's about, physical boundaries that are put on you, because obviously it takes place in a prison, but also boundaries that you set when you're developing a new friendship, especially like when you're almost kind of forced to develop a relationship between or with somebody because you're in close personal contact with them pretty much most of the day. The director died in 1969, so shortly after this came out. So no chance of a commentary from him, but I think maybe either a commentary or a video essay about the director by Jonathan Owen would be great. He's done a lot of work on releases for Eastern European cinema. I found almost nothing in English about the director, so it's hard for me to say, like, what else there should be. I did find out that the screenwriter, and again, I'm going to butcher the name, Branimir Skapognovic, had a fairly prolific career, not just in screenwriting, but also with novels and short stories. So maybe something about his career might be interesting as well. I think one of the Vinegar Syndrome partner labels might work pretty well for something like this. I'm kind of gravitating towards Decanologue for this one, just based on like their previous releases. I think this might kind of fit well in their wheelhouse. So, Walden, 1969, former Republic of Yugoslavia representing.
All right.
All right, Brian, next pick.
Okay, you guys may have actually talked about this on the show. I'm trying to figure out if it has enough ratings to qualify, but it is called Demon Warp. It's from 1988. It is a Bigfoot movie. You guys seen this?
Come on, you woolly bastard! Come on!
Yeah, well, I've seen that's with George Kennedy, right?
That's correct. Yes.
This has been on. It does. I think it does.
I think it's on our
It is on our list.
Cover.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
It's a blast. It's definitely a blast, and there's a point at the end. I don't want to get into the ending because that's where it really steps up into sort of next level bonkers, where you're just like, whoa, okay. But just the setup, even just the opening is great because it's like George Kennedy and his daughter are playing Trivial Pursuit, and suddenly this Sasquatch like literally blows through the door. Like, this is a weird thing that I don't even think about, but I'm actually kind of a fan of creatures blowing through doors. Like they just really destroy the door as they come through. And I can't remember if he does that or if he just knocks it off the. But anyway, so they're playing Trivial Pursuit, which is funny enough to see George Kennedy playing Trivial Pursuit, but then they're interrupted by this, Bigfoot coming in, and he drags the daughter away, and then we cut to like a group of young folks, in their 20s driving in a van, kind of I don't know, 80s slasher style almost. And you're just like, wait a minute, what happened with the other thing? And they end up at this cabin, and you find out that it's like, I don't know, somebody's dad had rented the cabin from George Kennedy, but he's still sort of hanging around up there because he's looking for the Bigfoot, sort of hunting the Bigfoot. And some of the kids one of the notable kids in the car is Billy Jane, who's been in a ton of stuff and he's the brother of Bad Ronald, and I'm trying to think, like he was in Parker Lewis Can't Lose, and he's just in all kinds of stuff that I'm blanking on, like
Superstition.
Oh, he's
and
just one of the guys.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
There's a big one. Bloody Birthday. Yeah, he's great. So anyway, he's one of the kids in this group, and so they're just hanging around, and they start to run afoul of the Bigfoot as well. And then some crazy stuff happens towards the end, which I'm not going to get into. I will say, don't read the synopsis on Letterboxd if you haven't, because it kind of gives away that last level, and I think it's better not to know what's coming and just kind of roll with it when it happens. But the Bigfoot creature is pretty cool looking, pretty weird looking, and effective. And yeah, this one just has always been one that I just think is a completely out of its mind crazy movie that needs some kind of physical release. I don't know that there's really an official even DVD release, like looks like maybe there's some kind of double feature with The Church on Amazon that I guess is semi-official that came out in 2020, but I'd have to look at it to see what kind of, official we're talking about. But this seems like a total, Vinegar Syndrome, basically where they would, one of those great things where they skip the Blu-ray and jump right to 4K. Because that's what they do. They'll just do something. But I mean, they came out with like Shriek of the Mutilated, which was just a Blu-ray last year. And that was a great, wonderful release from them. That's another bonkers, Bigfoot movie. But yeah, this one just so nutty and so perfect for Vinegar Syndrome that I would hope maybe they're even working on it. There must be some issue with the rights, I would think, because I can't believe somebody like Arrow or some label somewhere hasn't picked this up, so there may be some issue there. But in terms of the actual features, I mean, a director commentary, like how did this movie get made? What were we thinking when we made it? Just any insights into the creative process on this one. And then some George Kennedy and Billie Jane interviews would be good too, although I don't know how much either of them, especially Kennedy, would recall from this movie. And, Kennedy did so many movies that it may be a case of like, he doesn't really remember this one at all. But if he had any memories of it, that'd be kind of cool to hear. So that's Demon Warp from 1988.
Yeah. It's kind of funny sometimes is like when they still pull in people anyway who don't remember the film and they have these, I can't think of an example right now. I know I've listened to a commentary before where it was a moderated commentary, but it was either the actor, it was probably an actor who was doing it. And they were like, I don't remember anything. And it was like they were watching the film for the first time. And they're like, wow, that was weird. And that's funny. And like, oh, wow, I look great in that scene. Like that. God, I wish I could remember who that was.
I've definitely heard a few of those. And to be fair, like, I think it's almost, I don't want to say unreasonable, but to come to some older actor from, for a movie they did 40 years ago, like as cliche as it is to say, I can't remember what I had for breakfast 3 days ago. So like to ask them to do that, I don't know. I think it just takes a real special kind of person to even remember anything from it,
Very true. Very true.
So it's neat when they do, ultimately.
Absolutely. All right, Lance, next pick.
Okay. This is a strange pick that popped into my head last minute. It's an animated film.
Oh,
okay.
Raggedy Ann and Andy, A Musical Adventure from 1977.
Nice. I've never seen this, but I've seen this show up on some person's Letterboxd favorites or something. And I was like, oh, I got to see this.
Yeah. I mean, have you seen this, Erica?
No.
Okay. I mean, it's a purely nostalgic pick, obviously.
Actually, maybe I have because you and I are the same age. So, I mean, if this was like, if you were watching this on TV, then I probably was too. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there has been a VHS. I'm pretty sure I had the VHS or my parents had the VHS for us and just plopped all three of us, my twin brother and my older brother, in front of the TV. And I just remember watching this too many times as a kid. And it is terrifying. It is, it's this choppy animation. It's a musical, which, obviously I love musicals, no matter how bad they are. Yeah, I'm just going to do the quick Letterboxd summary and because it just gets to the point. Raggedy Ann and Andy leave their playroom to rescue Babette, a beautiful French doll kidnapped by a pirate. And it's a mix of live action, a little girl has these toys, and then kind of a Toy Story situation, and then it turns animated where they go save this doll that's been stolen by a pirate. But it's loosely based. I kind of, when it popped into my head, I did some research on it. It's loosely based on an old 1924 story called Raggedy Ann and Andy and the Camel with the Wrinkled Knees. And I do vividly remember that character in this cartoon.
Okay.
But yeah, there's these characters, there's these dreamlike situations that pop up. The cartoon is it's so off the wall. And the movie itself is very interesting, but the production and the history of the movie is one that would make for some entertaining special features. The thing was a huge box office failure, going over budget. They pushed the release date over and over again. It did not do well financially at all. It originally started as a stage musical, before it was transformed into a live action television show. And then it ultimately turned into an animated feature. So there are a lot of ideas going around. And I think like an overview of the production would be cool to hear about and learn about, because it does sound like a mess from the start. It was directed by animator Richard Williams, who later won some Oscars for his work as animation director for Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, okay.
So, I mean, the animation is okay. They did try to go for like this Disney-esque animation at that time, but it's very choppy. Like, and I kind of like it because of that reason. But it is a musical, and Joe Raposo wrote the music and original songs. And he's well known for his television work. He wrote pretty much all the original songs from Sesame Street, including the theme. He wrote the Three's Company theme song.
Oh.
So he knows what he's doing.
Clearly.
Come and knock on our door.
So I think a special feature, just, looking into him and his work would be fun. Didi Khan did the voice for Raggedy Ann. She's Frenchie from the Grease movies.
Oh, yeah.
So she has this kind of, raspy, rugged voice, kind of gravelly. And they powered through some of her singing sessions. She sings as Raggedy Ann. And she had laryngitis during some of these recordings, and she wasn't happy about it. She wanted to re-record it, but they're like, no, I think it adds to the character. So we're keeping it in. So I think an audio commentary with Didi Khan would be really fun to listen to. But yeah, the whole movie is just trippy, completely nightmare inducing. Like, there's this monster I vividly remember. He was called the Greedy. And he was this blobby, taffy, like living pile of candy. And I mean, he used to ruin my sleep as a kid. Like, it's not even like visuals. It's more like when I remember I would dream and I would feel like I'm stuck in this monster, like this candy monster. It was more of like a physical feeling that this cartoon just destroyed me. I would give this to Severin kids. You know how they did the peanut butter?
Yeah.
I think it's weird enough for, both children and adults who just lose their minds too. And I'd like to see more of their, I think they only have like 2 or 3 titles from that, from that little line they created with Peanut Butter Solution.
Can I add like one more
special feature?
Well,
yeah.
It's not a special feature, but you know how like when they released The Changeling, they had the ball that was tossed down the stairs as one of like the things you could buy. I'm sorry, but this sounds like you need edibles to go with its release.
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, absolutely.
I don't know. That might not fare well for some people, though.
It might freak some people out.
Call it the Greedy. Like, that would be the episode. You just, dress it up like a candy ball. Like just I don't know.
Yikes.
I'm having nightmares. But yeah, this is one that just, it hasn't been, I think it's like 20th Century Fox doing it. It's like public domain kind of at this point where you can just watch it all over the place. Okay. So I don't know how I'd get a release, but I think it deserves one.
Severin, let's get some candy going with this release.
Here's what America's toughest critics say about scenes from Raggedy Ann and Andy.
Great! Really, really good. The music got to me in a very certain way.
Raggedy Ann and Andy is a new musical adventure released by 20th Century Fox. If you think it's just a story about dolls, you're in for a surprise.
It's very exciting.
Welcome to Looneyland!
That big googly eye thing with eating all that candy.
I am the Greedy.
I like all the parts the best.
And Raggedy Ann and Andy has enough fun and excitement for everyone in the family. It's the musical adventure that has the critics raving.
I would give it 11 stars.
Rated G.
All right. So my next pick, back to Japan. Cute Devil from 1982, directed by Nobuhiko Obayashi, best known for Hausu from 1977. Short and sweet. This is the director of Hausu doing his TV movie version of The Bad Seed.
Whoa.
So yeah, I mean, I don't need to go into depth about the film. It's essentially like if you take the weirdness that Obayashi brings into all of his movies and transplant that into a Bad Seed adaptation, that's exactly what this is. I would love to see, an essay by Chuck Stevens. He wrote an essay for the Criterion booklet of Hausu. I think, and that being said, I don't think this is Criterion material. I know that sounds kind of like I'm not trying to like downgrade what the movie is, but Third Window Films has done some great releases for Obayashi. They did his 80s films box set and his anti-war trilogy, so I think they would be perfect for this. Aaron Giroux did a commentary for School in the Crosshairs on one of those sets, so I think he could potentially do a commentary track for this. And I'm just going to put it out there, a video essay about all of the Bad Seed iterations by yours truly.
Yeah.
Give it to me. I've seen all of them. Let me do it.
Definitely your wheelhouse.
Yes, I could do it. So, Cute Devil 1982, Obayashi does the Bad Seed. Give it to me. I believe this, was this on YouTube? I might have had to get this legal adjacent. Ooh, I don't remember. If there's a link, I'll put it in show notes.
Yeah, I wanna watch this for sure.
Cute. Cute Devil is cute, folks. All right, Brian, next pick.
Okay, I am going to go. Now, this one's gotten a DVD, which is kind of cool, from Umbrella. So maybe they would end up doing a Blu-ray, but I assumed them not doing a DVD. This DVD came out relatively recently, so I was like, oh, maybe it's harder to do a Blu-ray. Maybe the elements are wacky. I don't know. But I'm talking about Lunatics: A Love Story from 1991. This is with Ted Raimi and Deborah Foreman, which I love both those actors, especially Deborah Foreman. And Bruce Campbell is kind of a lame ex-boyfriend to Deborah Foreman in this. But the idea is basically that it's sort of set in a seedy part of LA, and Ted Raimi plays a guy who's basically agoraphobic, partially because he has these really crazy hallucinations that include Bruce Campbell again as a doctor, like an evil scientist type doctor who wants to like stick syringes in him. The Bruce Campbell doctor, I think he wears a mask, but it's still him as far as I remember. I want to say it's him. Maybe I'm misremembering that. But anyway, so Ted Raimi lives in this apartment. He is kind of going crazy, and Deborah Foreman plays this girl who her boyfriend again is played by Bruce Campbell, and he plays such a great dick when he wants to. And so it's one of those bits where he shows up and he's just kind of like, I'm leaving, basically, and just kind of bails on her while they still owe money on their, really crappy apartment. So she gets in trouble for that and basically has to go on the run from the cops about the money. I think it's about the money they owe in the apartment. And she, or I can't remember, maybe Bruce Campbell gets in trouble. So she's being chased by some thugs, and she ends up in a phone booth, and Ted Raimi's character, meanwhile has like covered his apartment in tinfoil because he's trying to, I don't know, protect himself from these hallucinations. And so he calls this number that's like supposed to be like a 1-900 number. And it ends up dialing her in the phone booth she happens to be hiding in. And I don't know if it's a 1-900 where it's like sex talk, but it's more like people will meet you, kind of, meet a friend, but sort of thing. And so she answers the phone, and he kind of talks her into coming over to his apartment and really she's in trouble. She has no place to go. So she's like, okay. And it doesn't start off well because, again, he's kind of crazy, but eventually sort of evolves into a sort of a budding romance kind of thing. And eventually, I think the goons show up and try to take her away, and Ted Raimi sort of has to rescue her, has to leave his apartment and fight off some crazy hallucinations, including like a giant spider. He sees spiders. There's also a really crazy scene where he sees rappers in his apartment, and they just make this song about nervous breakdown. They're just it's crazy. The movie's super weird, but I just love Ted Raimi in it, and Deborah is really great. And so it's just one of those weird, quirky romance kind of movies that just totally appeals to me. It's directed by Josh Becker, who is part of the Raimi troupe. I can't remember what he did on the Evil Dead movies, but he did his own stuff like Thou Shalt Not Kill Except, which has Sam Raimi as like a cult leader in it. And then he did Running Time, which is a pretty cool movie with Bruce, that I want to say did I think it was Synapse put that out on Blu-ray in the last couple of years. And it's supposed to be basically the gimmick of that one is it's like a robbery, sort of a robbery movie, but it's supposed to be all one take for like 70 minutes. Basically, Bruce Campbell gets out of jail and goes to see a buddy, and then they end up, doing a robbery and escaping. And there's some hidden cuts in there, but it's a really interesting experiment with Bruce. So anyway, this is my favorite Josh Becker movie for sure. And like I said, Umbrella put out a DVD of it, but this feels again like something that Vinegar Syndrome could do, and even could do on a 4K. I would love to see that. I don't know why I keep coming back to Vinegar Syndrome, but some of these movies, it just feels like they take the best care of it, and they always end up giving you that 4K that you totally didn't expect. But I'd love to hear a Josh Becker commentary on this, as basic as that is, just because I just love to know more about this movie. I haven't, there's some interviews online, but I haven't been able to find out a lot about it. And then, of course, interviews with Deborah Foreman and Ted Raimi, which, being the movies from 91, I'm hoping they would still remember things about it and maybe have some, insights about the weirdness. And I don't know, like the fact that Deborah Foreman made as many interesting and sometimes odd movies as she did, I've always really respected. So this is one of the weirder movies that she ever made. And I'm very curious if she even remembers it fondly at all, but she's great in it. So, it'd be great to hear from her on it. But yeah, Lunatics, a Love Story from 1991.
I want it.
Yes. You sold me, Brian.
Yeah.
It's fun stuff.
This is no horror movie. It's a love story.
Anybody that don't come out of the apartment for 6 months got to be crazy.
Hank has a few problems. Nancy's got troubles all her own. His are imaginary spiders, psycho rap musicians, and big, long needles. Hers are a little more real. It was truly love at first sight.
This is hell now, right?
No, the tinfoil keeps the heat out.
Only no one told Nancy. So with a little tinfoil and a whole lot of courage,
I've got to get her back.
Hank's gonna tackle the real world. Lunatics, a crazy kind of love story, starring Theodore Raimi and Deborah Foreman.
All right, Lance, next pick.
Okay, so this is our third Blu-ray wish list episode, and I've always picked at least one movie we covered on an episode.
Yeah, you're always good for that.
Yeah, I need to stay true to that formula.
You do.
Obviously, it doesn't work; they're not being released, but I really want a Blu-ray release of Giulio Questi's Arcana from 1972, starring the amazing Lucia Bosé. As we discussed on our episode, everybody should check that episode out if you haven't, but the plot for Arcana it's a bit of a mystery. It's kind of a strange psychological spiritual journey, a horror film, I would say. Very thought-provoking. Interpretation is completely open to each viewer, and I love movies like that. But it's a visual sonic powerhouse, and I'd love to see it all cleaned up and released on a Blu-ray. Most of the cast and crew, the crew itself is just Giulio Questi. They have all passed away, but for that episode, I watched so many interviews online with Questi, and I would love to see them all collected and compiled into a single place, like a special features on a release like this. Also, I speak very highly of his shorts that he began making, his digital shorts. He began making these by himself at the age of 78, alone in his home. Get all these together and add them to like a single release just to celebrate Giulio Questi as a creative who never stopped making films until he passed away at 90 in 2014. So I kind of just want, I want a Giulio Questi box set, but just put it all with Arcana because that's the big release. I think is that like Death Laid an Egg.
That's his most popular one.
That's his most popular one.
Okay.
I think Mondo Macabro could pick this up to handle something like this.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking Cauldron Films as well, but I would give it to Mondo Macabro. And it's such a weird movie. And I don't know, the genre is all over the place. Giulio Questi with all his movies, he would split and bend genres really well together. And I think this is kind of like the epitome of that formula that he used. But I want it on my shelf.
I do too. Especially like after we covered it, and I was just like, man, I actually guessed that this was going to be on this episode from you.
Oh, good.
So I'm proud of myself for that.
You know me.
All right, last pick.
Oh, I'm going to take a guess because I know you too. This is going to be a box set.
Yeah, of course.
Nice.
It's cheating time.
I learned this from you because my last pick is a box set.
Oh, good for you. You finally learned how to cheat. Okay. I'm a bad influence.
It's a 25 film box set.
It's all 90s horror because Erica's favorite. Okay, so my last pick is a box set, and it's a little bit of a cheat because I already know that the idea of this will happen. Made in Hong Kong, Volume 2.
Oh, there you go.
Because I know it's going to happen because we had Volume 1. So, Made in Hong Kong, Volume 2, obviously Vinegar Syndrome would be the one putting this out. So Volume 1 was all Anthony Wong films. I want Volume 2 to be all Simon Yam films. So the 3 movies I would want for this are Holy Weapon from 1993, Twist from 1995, and Bullet for Hire from 1991. So Holy Weapon, I mentioned this in previous episodes, is a period wuxia. It's about a guy, Mokake, who takes an invincibility drink to defeat the best Japanese warrior called Super Sword. Super Sword is played by Yam. 3 years later, Super Sword returns, and Kake must gather 7 female virgins in order to defeat him. So very, wild plot like most Hong Kong movies like this are. There's lots of fun action, like the opening and closing battles has like people flying through the air and Simon Yam like on top of them, like he's on gliders or something. There's, lasers shooting out of people's fingers. And then at one point, Yam turns into a sword via very 90s CGI. It's bad looking, but it's great.
Love it.
So that's Holy Weapon 1993, and then Twist from 1995. This is directed by Danny Lee. It's a quote unquote twisted cop thriller that focuses on the interrogation of Simon Yam's character and the extreme lengths that the Hong Kong police will go to in order to close their case. A lot of Hong Kong movies like this paint the cops in a negative light, but this one takes it to a whole new level as far as like torturing the person that they're interrogating. Then Bullet for Hire 1991. This is a heroic bloodshed movie about 2 triad hitmen. They get a new partner who's kind of new to this line of work, so they take him under their wing. Soon one of them gets blackmailed by the cops, and that ends up putting all 3 of the hitmen in danger. So special features, obviously it has to be packed because it's a box set. So in the booklet, Simon Yam interview, an essay about Hong Kong cops and how they're portrayed in these films. I think Bruce Holochek would be great to write that. He did the essay about Category 3 movies in the Hong Kong Volume 1 set. Commentary for Holy Weapon. I want 2 tracks. I'm getting greedy on this one. One by Wong Jin, who is the director, and another by Frank Zhang. Interviews with cast and crew of Holy Weapon. Michelle Yeoh is in this, so I know she's probably too big for something like this now, but you never know, so fingers crossed for that. A Danny Lee interview regarding Twist, since he directed that one. Bullet for Hire, maybe a commentary track on that one. That would be the last one I would probably pick for a commentary track if I wanted one, but maybe the guys from Podcast on Fire for that. A Jackie Chung interview regarding Bullet for Hire. A video essay on Simon Yam titled, Lance, are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
It's Yammer time.
You can't get any better than that.
Of course.
That's in the show. Yeah. That's it.
And then you can't have a Hong Kong release like this without a Sam Deegan commentary. I think she would love to do it for the movie Twist. And then I'll cap it all off with a Haunt Love box design for it.
Hell yeah.
That's my box set pick, my big cheat. Vinegar Syndrome, Made in Hong Kong, Volume 2, Simon Yam.
It's a good one.
Cool.
Brian, last pick.
Well, this one, I wonder what the deal is because it feels like it should have already happened. And to be fair, I do have a Japanese import Blu-ray of it, but I think it's just it's not a restoration or anything like that. So I'm not really counting that. But Kenny and Company, Don Coscarelli's 1976 coming of age, really delightful movie.
Cheer, laugh, get loose as a goose. Kenny and Company are on their way with Kenny, our hero. Sometime, Marcy, the young fox. Is he ever going to kiss her? Big Doug, a Secret Service agent. Kenny's loyal sidekick. Watch out for him on Halloween. They're all on the lookout for the bully. It's the funniest victory in movie history. Kenny and Company, rated PG.
It has a really great Halloween section where, the kids are running around on Halloween night, going to like a haunted house in somebody's garage and doing a great trick with a fake body that they throw in the road. And anyway, Dan McCann is Kenny, and Michael Baldwin, who he'd use in Phantasm, is like his buddy. And it's just several days in the life of this kid. He's a 12-year-old, and he, has a crush on a girl. I mean, it's like pretty straightforward stuff, but it's just really well done and really heartfelt. And I just adore this movie. It's just so good. And I think the trick maybe is that it's 20th Century Fox, and I don't know who controls if it's a Disney thing now or what, but Anchor Bay put out a nice DVD of this years ago that has Coscarelli commentary, which is great. So I'd obviously want to get that ported over. And there's even like a making of featurette. This is back when Anchor Bay was really doing some really nice DVD special editions.
Yeah.
And so, there's a making of with, I feel like they talk to the cast, which includes Reggie Bannister, who's like a teacher in this. And Reggie Bannister obviously plays a big part in the Phantasm series.
Great music.
So, great guy. A lot of fun in this as a teacher. But I would love to see this come out from, I don't know, like Arrow would be pretty cool to get like I'm swinging for the fences here. So I'd love to see a 4K from Arrow. And I'd love them to include Coscarelli's film Jim the World's Greatest, which has what's his name that played the tall man in
Angus Scrimm.
Angus Scrimm in it, and it's more of a kind of a downbeat young boy movie, but like it goes really well with this one. And I don't think that one's ever gotten a release outside of VHS. So to get even just a Blu-ray with that on it would be cool. It's not as good as Kenny and Company by any means, but I do feel like it's one of his first, if not his first features. And I just love Coscarelli a lot. And so I feel like on that level, it's important and should be included. I mean, this could even go Criterion for all I like. I feel like they don't necessarily pay attention to a guy like Coscarelli, which is a bummer, but I really think it's that cool of and interesting of a couple movies that could fit into the Criterion slot too. But Arrow, I think, would do a good job with it. Vinegar Syndrome maybe, would also, but it seems more likely that being that it might be trickier to deal with some of the studio stuff, that Arrow seems to be handling that a little better just in terms of navigating some pretty interesting deals in 4K with some pretty major studios, and they have for a long time. Whereas Vinegar Syndrome's doing it, but they're still relatively early outside of, MGM. We're seeing some Universal. I'm trying to think if they've done any Paramount yet, but I don't think a lot of people have done any Fox outside of, Twilight Time years ago. So that might be tricky, but Kenny and Company, a must and really a great little movie.
Yeah. One of the things I love about doing these episodes is having that like, whoa moment where you realize like, oh shit, that doesn't have a Blu-ray or 4K release, and if it does, there might be like a foreign, like you mentioned, the Japanese import. I think one of the ones in the Hong Kong box that I mentioned has a Hong Kong Blu-ray, but they don't put any care into that. So when we talk about these releases, we're talking about labels like Arrow, Criterion, Vinegar Syndrome, Severin, who put the care into these releases. So I'm really surprised Kenny and Company doesn't have one. And I agree. I'm sure it's something to do with Fox. So that's a bummer.
That's problematic with Disney involved. So who knows if it'll ever happen, but I do have my import and I held on to my old DVD just for the hell of it, so right. But here's open.
Yeah, for sure. Lance, bring it home.
Okay. This is my box set. This is my big pick. And I would just call it Po' Boy Productions. Okay. It's no secret that I'm a fan of Fred Williamson and his work. Love him or hate him, you have to respect. He's a DIY, who gives a shit about budget filmmaker. And I especially find his Po' Boy production films like very endearing as hell. He stars in all of them. He usually directs and writes or co-writes these films. They're great and very terrible all at the same time. But they're always so much fun for me. And there are dozens of Po' Boy production films to choose from. So Po' Boy Productions was a production company that Williamson created in 1974 with the release of Mean Johnny Barrows with Roddy McDowall. He did Adios Amigo, a comedy western with Richard Pryor, Joshua. Just a lot of films in the mid to late 70s. And this production company that he created helped him, make these films and break into the industry. So there's a lot of, there's some better known Po' Boy films to choose from, but I want to focus for this set on his direct-to-video stuff, mainly from the 90s, where he basically plays the same role. It's always like, he's always a cop, and his name is like Dakota Smith or Cal or Derringer or something, but...
Always an ex-football player.
Well, yeah, because he always has bad knees. In the 90s, his knees are shot, so you have to have I have to have a backstory and explanation for that. Yeah, so I'm going with, this is a little... I want to throw like 12 movies in this, but I'm only going to pick 5 Po' Boy productions. The Kill Reflex from 1989. That's also known as Soda Cracker, which is his character's name in it. 3 Days to Kill from 1992. South Beach from 1993. Really? Oh, yeah. Okay. Night Vision from 1997. And then I had to throw in On the Edge. I think he's Dakota Smith in that one as well, which stars Ice-T. That's from 2002. I'm not going to go through each film because they're all the same. He's a cop and something like his partner's killed, or he gets involved in some sort of heavy drug ring. And he typically goes against the police force to solve the case and stop the bad guys.
Wow. Sorry, Eric, I know you're down on South Beach, but oh my God, this cast.
I know. That's why Lance had it 3.5 and I saw the cast and I was like, hell yeah, I'm watching this. Gary Busey, always off the hook. And I watched it. Good God, Lance, I cannot believe you. I just can't. That movie is 100% ad-libbed.
Oh,
yes.
Wow. Okay.
And it's amazing.
Oh God, stop it.
No, okay.
But just Peter Fonda, in addition to Gary Busey and Williamson, Robert Forster, Vanity, Sam J. Jones is in the movie. Henry Silva's in the movie. I gotta see this.
Yeah. So he had a lot of regular casts of actors that for these Po' Boy 90s movies. The heavy hitters and the big ones in most of them are Gary Busey, who pops up in almost all of them, and Bo Svensson.
Oh, yeah.
So I think, like you said too, Brian, Robert Forster, Henry Silva popped up a bunch. Joe Spinell was in a bunch of them before he passed.
Oh, nice.
So interviews with Svensson and Busey about the films and working with Fred Williamson would be a blast. I mean, extensive interviews with Busey alone would be completely unhinged. I mean, come on. And if you have On the Edge, Ice-T always puts on.
Oh, hell yeah.
I just think dealing with his cast of characters, like these misfits and, arguably problematic people in real life, Fred Williamson himself included.
Yeah.
They'd be a disaster. Like, can you imagine Fred Williamson doing audio commentary for each one of these films?
Oh my gosh.
He would either be breaking down how amazing the technique of his camera work is, or he would just be bashing the movie the whole time and like saying how much, how much he hated working with somebody. I don't know. But some of these movies, they have had German releases that I found. No like special features or anything like that. Most of his Po' Boy stuff just isn't available in physical media. I know Code Red and Scorpion released a few of the Williamson's films like Mean Johnny Barrows, Death Journey, Joshua. Kino have released some of his work. So maybe I could see Kino doing some sort of special collection box set. I don't know. I mean, I don't know who would want to touch Fred Williamson. But to add on to special like features, I think a documentary on Williamson, mini doc on his career would be a lot of fun. Spending time covering his time as a defensive back in the NFL, getting his nickname The Hammer, and just how he got into filmmaking and ultimately focusing in on his Po' Boy production film company.
Nice.
But yeah, I know he's become problematic in his twilight years. He's an angry old man at this point with really, really, really bad knees. And this would just be volume 1 of the set. I'm not picking his best because my favorites include the big score starring John Saxon, Richard Roundtree, The Messenger with Cameron Mitchell and Joe Spinell. One Down, Two to Go is one of my favorites. Jim Carrey, Jim Brown, Joe Spinell's in that too. I mean, if listeners haven't really taken a dive into these po' boy Fred Williamson movies, I'd start with those, but no, they're bad. Like you said, I mean, the script is very basic. Like, let's do a bad cop and all right, let's drink some beer and make this movie. Like
You're calling it a script. I would say there's the wall with sticky notes on it.
There's a plot. Yeah, there's a basic plot.
And then they're pulling the sticky notes off the wall after they're like, this scene. And then they pull that off the wall and that's it.
Yeah, no, because I recently watched The Kill Reflex, and there was a scene where I could totally see Fred Williamson like say, wait, wait a minute, a train? There's a train scheduled to run through this town at 2 p.m.? Okay, let's use the train somehow. And like the scene that makes no sense. It's completely unnecessary. But yeah, I would love to see some sort of Po' Boy Productions set.
I mean, as much as I do hate South Beach, I do want this box set now.
Yeah, same.
Most of this stuff is on Tubi, by the way.
Yeah,
or you can just find a lot of it on. Yeah, and it's probably the best place to watch it because you need like the breakup and commercials to be like, what am I doing? This is the best thing in my. It's just terrible.
Coming out swinging with your first box set on a Blu-ray wishlist episode, Lance.
Hell yeah, I did want a 25 film 90s horror box set. Talk about it for 2 hours to put you to sleep and anger you.
All right, well, this was a lot of fun. Brian, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your picks with us this
thank
time.
You so much.
My pleasure. Thank you guys again so much for the invite.
Of course. Can you tell our listeners where to find and follow you and all the good work that you're doing?
Thank you. Pretty active on Twitter, sort of, I guess. Bob Freelander on Twitter, and then I have Just the Disc Pod and Pure Cinema Pod Twitters. Same thing with the Instagram, Just the Disc Pod and Pure Cinema Pod there, and Just the Disc Pod, or Just the Disc YouTube channel is another thing that I'm doing weekly stuff with. If you want to see what I'm watching, what I'm getting, and Blu-ray stuff, that's where to look.
Perfect. Thanks so much. If you aren't already, you can follow Unsung Horrors on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors. Brian, you're on Letterboxd. What's your at?
I think it's just, if you can look up Brian Saur, I think that's what, or Rupert Pupkin. What is it saying? Yeah, no, Letterboxd / Rupert Pupkin is my actual tag. Sorry.
Okay. We'll put a link to that in show notes as well for folks to follow there. You can follow me on Letterboxd, Instagram, and I guess Twitter still for now. Hex Massacre. Exactly. And Lance?
I'm on Instagram and Letterboxd at El Shivey.
Folks, stick around after this break. We have Celeste La Cabra sharing her picks for her Blu-ray wish list. And then following that will be Ryan from the Disconnected channel. Thanks, everyone.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal, providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.
All right, and next up, I am thrilled to welcome Celeste La Cabra here to share her picks for her Blu-ray wish list. Welcome, Celeste.
Hi, Erica. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on the show. I've been a fan of yours and this show since I heard about you through Ryan at The Disconnected. He was talking about your book, and I watched your appearance on his show, and I've just become a big fan of you and the work that you do. So I greatly appreciate the invitation.
Of course. And thank you so much for that. Likewise, I am a fan of the work that you're doing on your YouTube channel. But for folks who aren't familiar with that, can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and the content that you put out on YouTube?
Sure. So yeah, my name is Celeste La Cabra. I use they and she pronouns, and I have a nifty little YouTube channel, which you can find on the internet. that is just under my name. And what I like to do over there is do thoughtful, in-depth discussions and analyses on various films that I watch. And there's also a pretty strong focus on Blu-rays and physical media, which is why I'm very excited to be here discussing this topic, because it's something that I'm very passionate about and I spend a lot of time and energy and money on. Yeah, so that's kind of where I started, was just talking about Blu-rays, because that was something that was a little bit easier for me and just something to get my feet wet and get everything started. But lately I've really been putting a lot of focus into really breaking down and going deep into analyzing a particular film. What I like to focus the most on in my channel is on the themes that a film presents, whereas I feel a lot of film analysis or film reviews are focusing on aspects of just, I guess, surface level things. I try my best not to sound too pretentious when I talk about these things, but like I feel like a lot of focus is put on just the plot or just the characters or just the actors. And, you know, some people will take it further and get into analyzing like shot composition and blocking and things like that, which is something that I like to talk about as well. But what is the most interesting to me is, the themes that the films are presenting, whether that be political or otherwise. I mean, I am of the opinion that every film is political to some extent. It's just a matter of how overt it is. If that sounds like your kind of thing, just more in-depth analysis, they've been getting a lot of good reception and I have a lot of fun making them. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, I would love to have you.
Yeah, definitely check out Celeste's channel. I'm a big fan of like the Blu-ray collection stuff in particular. That's just, that's my bag. But, I've definitely watched some of the other stuff. And that's what we're here to talk about, is the Blu-ray stuff. So with that, let's jump into your first pick for what's on your Blu-ray wish list.
So there's a bit of a theme with my selections here. 3 out of the 5 that I've picked today are art house animation films. I'm just a really big fan of animation as a medium, and I feel as though it is really undervalued and underappreciated, and there's not a ton of it in terms of stuff that isn't just Disney or anime, It's very labor intensive, and it takes a real passion to create adult animation that isn't just Family Guy, you know? So my first pick is a film directed by Chris Sullivan, and it is entitled Consuming Spirits. This was something that I watched on the Criterion channel and their art house animation bundle, which I did my best to watch that whole thing. I don't think I got through all of it, but this is a very long film. It's 136 minutes. He made it over the course of 15 years, just slowly adding to the various facets of the animation and the story. I mean, there's some voice acting going on here, but I think he did almost everything. So I guess it starts off with a man who's kind of being interrogated by the police, and he's kind of telling the story of his life. And it is just such a grim and dark and sad film.
I'm looking at it right now on Letterboxd, and that header image and the poster for it, or thumbnail image for it, that's I'm sold already. Like, I don't even need to know what this is about. I want to watch it.
Yeah, I'm also trying to keep it vague because I don't want to ruin it for anybody. Like, I want you to go into this experience the way I did.
Yeah,
it is so emotionally intense. It's the kind of thing where when it was done, I just felt bad, but in a good way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it was just so intensive. Yeah, I don't know. It's just the kind of thing that I was thinking about for days afterwards and just felt like something special. You know what? Here's something I'll compare it to that might help. It really gives me like a Twin Peaks kind of vibe. It has like a very Lynchian feel. And I know that everyone says that, but you're kind of talking about this very small town that on the surface, everything is going fine and it's happy and it's joyous. And, these sort of stereotypes about small town living where it's much more homely or the people are kinder to each other as opposed to like urban settings. However, you very quickly find the horrific, dark underbelly and the just generations of trauma that the town and the people in it have experienced. And I mean, Sullivan just uses so many different techniques of animation and storytelling, but it really is like nothing else I've ever seen. my man took 15 years to make this thing. Like, that is the extent of the passion into this story and this idea. Just doing it himself, basically.
That's awesome.
And it is just such a stunning achievement.
So who do you think would best be suited to release this?
I think it's got to be Criterion. I mean, that's where I first saw it, was on the Criterion channel. And they also hosted a quick interview with him talking about the film and everything like that. So they clearly already have some kind of relationship with him and think that this film is worth discussing.
So do you think that interview should be included as one of the special features on this then?
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with it. Like, since they already did the interview, it would make sense to throw that in as well.
Yeah.
Looking at his letterbox, it looks like he did a bunch of short animated films back in the 80s. I don't know how easy those are to access, but judging by the views on Letterboxd that these have, they're in the double digits. So I would assume that they're not super accessible, but it looks like he's working on a film right now. So if we could get a nice release of this and just kind of have a one-stop shop for his body of work up until this point on that release, with like all the short films and then the interview with him, and then probably it would be nice to have an audio commentary on there too. I'm a really big fan of those, and I feel like especially Criterion is not doing them as much, which bums me out. But yeah, that's kind of the package that would be in my dreams for this release.
I like it. Coming out swinging with Criterion. What do you got next?
Yeah. Next, all right, we're going from very highbrow, dark Criterion animation shit to bottom of the barrel B-movie shit. My next pick is The Killer Shrews, directed by Ray Kellogg.
Yes.
Have you seen The Killer Shrews?
Yeah.
All right, this is a personal pick. I have a story to go along with this.
Okay.
When me and my brother were like children, we used to watch the Animal Planet show, The Most Extreme. That's just a show where they just pick a category and then they rank the craziest animals. Like, they'll do the slimiest animals or the ones with the sharpest teeth or the fastest or something like that. Back in the day when cable was what you had, that was like one of our favorite shows to watch. And I could not tell you what the category was. There was some kind of elephant shrew in the list. And they would also include like fun little clips and stuff. And they included a clip of this film. And it was like a fun little joke at the end of the segment. And they were like, there have even been killer shrews portrayed in films, although these were clearly collies wearing masks, which is what they were. And you saw a little clip of it. And we were like infatuated. We were like, that's the coolest shit. We got to find that. And then we found it. We loved it. Like, we thought it was so great. And I think Mystery Science Theater did a commentary on it too.
That tracks.
And I think we watched that as well, and we had fun with that. Yeah, it's been something that we return to every so often and just continue to love. It's only 69 minutes I'm seeing. Is really not a lot to it, but that's a personal pick for me, for sure. It's something that I really enjoy. I don't care if it's good or not. I'm sure there's at least some other people out there that have some kind of attachment to this or just genuinely think it's good, in which case they're right. So yeah, I would be stoked.
Awesome. So who's releasing The Killer Shrews in your world here then?
I got to tell you, this wouldn't necessarily be my ideal place to put this out, but I don't see anybody but Scream Factory doing this.
Yeah.
This just screams Scream Factory to me. Like, they do all that kind of cheesy 50s Roger Corman stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've just like been waiting. I'm just like, I cannot believe that Scream Factory hasn't put this out yet. Like, this is just so, I don't know what it is. It just feels like a perfect match. And, you know, they'll charge like $30 for it and it won't have any features on it. It'll come in a blue case and I'll be disappointed. But you know what? It'll be out there. It'll be out there. And that'll be good. I'm not a huge fan of Scream Factory, to be honest with you. But I just don't see anyone else doing it. You know what? Maybe Kino. Because Kino likes to do this kind of schlocky 50 stuff too.
Yeah.
They're kind of into that.
Could
I
be.
would prefer that. I'm pretty sure Scream Factory is going to throw it in a shitty blue case and call it a day. I don't know who would do an audio commentary on this. I don't know. Maybe I'll do it. Hit me up. I'll do it. Maybe you could do it. You know, I'm not sure who is the resident expert on 50s. What would you even call this? Monster movies, I guess.
Killer animal monster movies. I mean, I think you could find like a Bird-Eye Gordon expert out there that could probably speak to this, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. So this has always been on DVD I mean, I think it's public domain. So when I went on Blu-ray.com, there's about 6,000 different DVD releases that they'll throw it on.
Mm-hmm.
But in any official capacity, it has always been packaged as a double bill with another film from the 50s called The Giant Gila Monster. So I hope this isn't a cheat, but it has always just come with that as like its B-side, I guess. And it would just feel incomplete to me without it. Or, I think Scream Factory would also probably do one of those maybe site exclusive double packs that they like to do and charge out the ass for like a bare bones 2-pack, Again, that's not ideal. That's just me thinking what is the most realistic. But, I would love to keep that DVD tradition alive and put the Giant Gila Monster on there too, because that's not on Blu-ray either, and I'd love to see it. But yeah, if you put that film on there, I think I could forgive a lack of shrew features.
I think there's a lot of opportunity when you're talking public domain films too. You could even, and this isn't something that, Shout Factory is dipping their toes into yet, but a novelization along with this would be fucking great.
That would be fun. And then the last bit is that I think throughout DVD history, they tend to come with the colorized versions of the two films as well.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of revisionism is not something I'm a fan of, but just for posterity and to kind of round out the features, why not throw that on there too? Someone already did the work, might as well.
There you go. All right, what about your third pick?
Oh boy, okay, this one is this is a rough one. This is another art house animation film. It's from 2014. It's entitled Rocks in My Pockets. It is a Latvian film directed by, I am so sorry if I butcher this person's name, Signe Beaumain. I hope I said that right. But she is a Latvian animator and director, filmmaker. And this is sort of her autobiographical animated film, kind of in the style of like a Persepolis or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And it kind of goes through her family history. But the primary thing that the film is about is her severe depression and suicidality. And so she goes through her family history of suicide and mental illness in her sort of family tree, I guess. Again, like the way this is animated is so beautiful and so creative, and that alone is worth seeking it out. But the way that she discusses her depression and her suicidal thoughts, I mean, I don't mean to bum everyone out here, but like, I've never quite seen anybody be that honest about it in a public capacity. Like, these are the type of thoughts that I have, and I'm like, I better not tell anybody lest they strap me down and drive me over to the hospital. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I mean, there are some parts in this where I had to pause and take a second because, like, it is so deeply honest, and she says things out loud that I'm sometimes too scared to think. But knowing that she is still alive and that she was able to articulate this and create something really beautiful out of it, it's just really inspiring. And it was something that really impacted me emotionally. But I will say that if you struggle with really severe depression or suicidal thoughts or things like that, I think that this film should come with a pretty substantial trigger warning. I think somebody in the wrong frame of mind could start this and be in a bad place. If that sounds like something that would provide some kind of catharsis for you, or if you feel like you're in a good place, it's just really, really amazing.
And those films are important to get out there too. Like, you can't have everything be like a good time, feel good movie. Like you need stuff like that out there too. Some people might have a hard time figuring out special features for something like that though. What were your thoughts on that?
I mean, if she wanted to do a commentary on it, that's always like the easiest go-to banger winner of a special feature is a director commentary. But I'm also just looking at her filmography, and it is vast. Like, there's a lot of animated shorts on here. Now, I know that that's always easier said than done to just kind of throw those all together. But man, when they can pull it off, when places can pull it off, it is just the best. Like, just to have everything in one package and make sure these short films aren't forgotten about. So really just any amount of these. Probably an interview with her would be good too. And, this is a film from Latvia. I don't know that I've seen a single other film from Latvia. So maybe even some kind of historical documentary or visual essay or interview with a historian to kind of place these stories and these images in some kind of historical context would be really valuable because I think, if we're being honest, like, I'll speak for myself. I don't really know anything about Latvia as a country. These types of really obscure foreign films are like an amazing opportunity to get to learn about different places and different cultures.
Did you have any thoughts on which label should put something like this out?
Again, I think Criterion or Kino would probably be the ones to do it. Criterion, just because, again, I saw it on the channel, and so that association is just in my mind. But Kino likes to take chances on these more obscure foreign art house modern films, it seems. Like Criterion will put out classics, 1960s Hungarian cinema or something like that.
Right.
When it had all that time to like become a classic and in retrospect, like an important film. I feel like Kino really, with the amount that they release, they take a lot of chances and put out a lot of underseen stuff from around the world that just came out last year or something, which is such an invaluable service. But I think that they would do this justice too.
All right. Fourth pick. What do you got?
This is a film from the Philippines. It is directed by Isabel Sandoval, and it is entitled Apparition. The listeners may know Isabel from her film Lingua Franca, which I believe was on Netflix. So if you don't know anything about Isabel Sandoval, she's obviously a Filipino filmmaker or Filipina filmmaker. And I believe one of, if not her first films, was from 2011, and it's entitled Señorita. And it's about a transgender sex worker. So she is a transgender director. And at the time, she wasn't out. So the director credits and the writing credits are all under her dead name, which I won't say here, but, it'll be there.
Okay.
Which is confusing, I think, if you don't know that going in. But apparently what happened was she wrote this script and wanted to make this film, and she couldn't find someone to play the lead. So she decided to do it herself and figured out some things along the way in crafting that character and playing that character. I don't know. She does a great job with it. Now she, lives that life for real all the time, which is amazing. And this is the film that came out right after it. It's actually still credited under her dead name, so I think it took her a little while to come to terms with all of that and actually fulfill that transition. But this film does not star her, but it is about a remote convent of nuns in the Philippines, and they really struggle with guilt regarding their sexuality and regarding their, I guess just thoughts about the world and desire for independence and freedom. And the way that this lifestyle is portrayed and the way that the higher up nuns are portrayed is just really gut-wrenching and really difficult. This is another, I guess, more personal pick as someone who grew up in the Catholic Church, and clearly that didn't work out great for me. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I don't know. I saw a lot of myself in this, and I saw a lot of my upbringing in this. I just generally really love nun films. That includes the more exploitative ones, but also I think there's some really fascinating films out there about convent life and about the inherent struggle between that and a person's natural sexuality, and especially with how patriarchal the Catholic Church is. The experience of a nun specifically is one that I find pretty fascinating.
For folks who look this one up on Letterboxd too, there's an article, Common Language from 2020 on Letterboxd. That's an interview with Isabel Sandoval. So if you, like me, aren't familiar with the director, that'd be a good place for folks to start and learn a little bit more about her.
Yeah, I see that. I hadn't actually read that, so that's pretty cool.
Who do you think should release this film then?
I mean, I keep coming back to Criterion or Kino. They are the ones that I think of in terms of these art house dramas that I tend to really gravitate towards. Mm-hmm. But you know what? Any number of Vinegar Syndrome partner labels could probably do a good job with this too. I'm trying to think of who in particular would tackle this. Maybe Decalog. I think they would do a good job, and they might be into this. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Criterion lately. That's another discussion for another day, but I've been kind of lukewarm on their announcements for a minute. But if they kind of get back to the deeper cuts, I guess, or not just a bunch of re-releases, that would be a great one, I think. And again, I watched this is probably why I keep coming back to it, is because I watch a lot of these deeper cuts on the Criterion channel because there's such a good resource for at least watching these films while they're in their limited engagements. And this was in a bundle of her films. At least for the more obscure stuff, they have been doing a lot of collector's sets. I don't know if like the early works of Isabel Sandoval would be like a good like mini set for them to do, but she seems like she's pretty accessible in terms of interviewing and discussing her works and things like that. So again, like an audio commentary, an interview with her. Again, maybe some expert could give a rundown of the history of like Filipino cinema, or just add some context to the place of the Catholic Church in that culture and time. Or again, like if Criterion wanted to hit me up, I'll do a commentary for it. I don't have any qualifications other than that I am also a trans ex-Catholic, so I could talk about that.
Okay, so last pick. What do you got?
This is my box set pick, but I guess I'll start by talking about my favorite film from it. I would love so much to have a Bill Plimpton box set. I love him so much. Like, he's just this sort of zany, esoteric, experimental adult animator, comedian, psycho weirdo. I love him. All of his films look like, or at least most of them, so a lot of these earlier ones look a lot like an animated like comic book or something, or like a comic strip, like in the newspaper. The one I want to talk about in particular is The Tune. Again, this was something that where a bundle of like 20 or so of his films was on the Criterion channel, and this was the first one, and I was just so in love with it, and we binged the whole bundle with all the short films and all the feature lengths. It's about this guy who's trying to write a hit song for the record label that he writes for. I think he writes jingles or something. He just keeps getting put in these bizarre situations where there's like a different song for every scene in the film, and the soundtrack is just such a banger. Like, I love it so much. Every song on it. This is one of those things where when we watched it, it just has become part of our lexicon in our house, where we'll just quote this or sing songs from it or replace lyrics with the names of our cats and stuff like that, One of those things. It's just such a delight. I see that it's not on anything streaming at the moment. It definitely has been in the past. Like on place, I think it was on Tubi for a while, a bunch of his films.
Mine's showing on Canopy on my Letterboxd.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's why I don't have access to that, unfortunately. So I don't have it in my services. Maybe I should, just to tell people. But yeah, there's so many great films, and he does a lot of good shorts too. There's one called Santa the Fascist Years. That's a fun one. The Cow Who Wanted to Be a Hamburger. I don't think he's vegan, but it's a good vegan film. There's this series of dog films. Like, there's one called Hot Dog, and there's one called Guide Dog. There's one called Guard Dog. They're just all really great. But in terms of the feature lengths, there's a film he made called I Married a Strange Person, which kind of explains it. It's this really weird kind of relationship, body horror. I don't even know how to describe the shit this man gets into. There's another one called Hair High, which is a kind of high school coming-of-age absurdist comedy horror film. There's just so much great stuff here. And I think you can get his stuff on DVD from his website, and he'll like sign it for you and stuff, but it's pretty pricey, and I believe it's just DVD. But in any case, I would love to see a more accessible, all-in-one, like one-stop shop for this man's incredible works.
Yeah, he's got a lot from what I can see. So are you looking for like maybe a box set of those three ones you mentioned, like The Tune, Hair High, I Married a Strange Person, and then some other of his short films included in that as special features?
Most of this is like 3-minute short films because I noticed that a lot of these kind of independent animators that I love so much, that's kind of what they have to work with a lot of the time, because to do a feature-length version of traditional 2D animation is expensive and labor-intensive and time-consuming, so they kind of get a lot of these ideas out in short films. Okay, I'm looking at his website. Yeah, this is an old-ass website. Like, you gotta really look. It says DVDs and Blu-rays, so I'm trying to figure out. See, they have one called Plimp Tunes, which is like more than 20 of his early short films. I mean, you could fit all that on a DVD, you know? And it says it's out of stock. So, like, this stuff is just not terribly accessible, even if it is available. Yeah, I mean, like, one or two of these, it looks like, are available on Blu-ray, and the rest of them are just single DVDs or short film compilation DVDs. I mean, to get all of this stuff would be well over $200, I think. If the will was there, we could get everything that's available on this website on one box set on like less than 10 Blu-rays, something like that. If you could fit 20 short films on a DVD, we can get a few of those on a Blu-ray, right? Who would be brave enough to do something this cool? My instinct says Criterion again, just because I would love it. I would love the legitimacy that would grant this type of filmmaking. They go all out when they do the director sets or the big box sets. It would be pretty nice. But again, I feel like I come back to Kino as somebody who would be brave enough to take the risk on something like this. And you know what? Kino would probably do it in volumes, which wouldn't be as ideal, but it would be better than nothing. You know, I'm thinking about it more, and I think the reason I am leaning towards Criterion as the one to do this, like they did that Stan Brakhage set. You know, the dude had like 100,000 short films, and they just put them all on that set. There's actually a few, I forget the name of it, but they're like science-based films. It's got like a seahorse on it. It's like DVD only right now, but it's again like a shit ton of short films.
Yeah.
And they also did that like 100 years of Olympic films, which is like, I mean, maybe the most ambitious physical media release I can think of. So I feel like Criterion is the one that has the resources to pull off something like this, and also the precedent for ridiculous sets like this. It's just a question of if they have the will to do it, and I'm not super confident in that. So, but that's my ideal dream world, I guess.
Well, that would be a packed box set if that ever did come to fruition. I love all of these picks. You brought the animated to this episode for sure.
You know, when I was making this list, I was having trouble thinking of things off the top of my head, but I have a letterbox list on my profile of quote unquote more obscure films that I really love. So the cutoff I made was 5,000 views on Letterboxd, and then an 8 out of 10 or above rating from me. I know that that's not super obscure, especially when talking to somebody like you, but there is quite a bit of more obscure stuff on there. I just had to pick a cutoff somewhere, I guess.
Yeah.
And when I was looking at those films and trying to see which ones had Blu-rays, that was like the quickest way to find the stuff that was missing this kind of representation. But what I kept finding is that consistently the ones that I rated the highest and didn't have any kind of physical representation, or like the director has to sell them out of his house or something, it's always animation. Like, I don't know what it is. It's like if you're not like the studios, you're not Disney, and you're not Studio Ghibli or something, like people don't care or don't give it the time of day, or it's like considered lesser or generally overlooked. And I think that that's such a crime. So yeah, I hope that someone turns the tide on this. So I guess that's to say I didn't even do that on purpose, but it just says something about the state of contemporary animation made for adults.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people pigeonhole that in, like, if you say adult animation, their first thought is anime. And there's a much, wider world out there outside of anime. Mm-hmm.
Japan isn't the only one doing thoughtful, thematically rich animated films,
Yeah. I hope people take that in consideration. Tell folks where they can find and follow you, Celeste.
Sure. So I am on YouTube at Celeste de la Cabra. That's my primary project and venture where you can find my videos and interact with me. I'm also on Instagram at Celeste de la Cabra. I'm pretty active over there. Feel free to hit me up there. And I am on Letterboxd, and my Letterboxd username sucks, and I got to change it, but I'm on there too. So
okay.
It's not easy to say out loud, I guess, because I had to take my old username and take out all the vowels for it to fit. So I'm probably going to change it soon so that I have clean, like, you can find me on Letterboxd here, as opposed to spelling out this ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
But I will send you the link so that it is in the show notes at least. Perfect. But I'm super active over there. So those are the 3 platforms where I'm most active, and you can easily hit me up. I'm also on TikTok but I haven't really made a go at actually making consistent content over there. But if you want to be waiting in the wings, as it were, and be there first when I make my big break on TikTok, come hang out over there.
That sounds great. I'll put links to all of that in show notes for folks to follow you and find you there. I can't promise anything for TikTok because I haven't made that jump, but I'm sure we got listeners who are on there. Celeste, thanks again so much for coming on and sharing your picks. This was great.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't talk your ear off too much. I know I can be a bit on the long-winded side when I'm talking about films I like. So I appreciate you affording me the time and the opportunity.
Of course. Not a problem at all. We all do it. So, but we're not done yet, folks. Right after this break, we've got Ryan from The Disconnected sharing his 5 picks. So stick around for that.
Hey, it's Death by Video.
I'm Phil.
I'm Kit.
And I'm Graham saying welcome to our podcast full of merry movie mayhem.
Ever wonder what an Irish kung fu movie would look like?
It's called Fatal Deviation, and we covered it.
Ever wonder what a movie about 1,000 cats would look like?
It's called Night of 1,000 Cats, and we covered it.
And it stars Hugo Stiglitz. Listen to Death by Video to hear us discuss and dissect some of the weirdest, wildest, and wackiest films ever made. All this and more on Death by Video!
Woo! All right, and next up we have Ryan from the Disconnected YouTube channel and podcast. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, Ryan, this whole episode has been about having people who talk about Blu-rays and physical media on their YouTube channels and their podcasts. So, can you tell folks at home? I'm sure we have a lot of mutual listeners / viewers, but for folks who may not be aware, can you tell everyone about The Disconnected?
Sure. I am a very lazy person who never puts out any content. And for anybody that watches my channel, that is probably making you laugh like crazy right now. I seemingly never sleep because I put up interviews with industry professionals pretty much every single week on some sort of random topic or diving into their company. And then every Thursday night, I do a review type of live show where we go over all of the boutique Blu-ray announcements of the previous week and have a guest on to discuss their feelings on those releases and then dive into some sort of fun topic afterwards. And it's been pretty fantastic. A lot of people are turning into like lifelong friends from it. So I'm very glad that this has started. And a lot of people that listen also listen to my show. So I'm just glad that everybody's been a wonderful part of this community.
Yeah, it's a great community. And for anyone who, like me, is working on getting off of Twitter, I can speak for, the community that Ryan has established. I was on your channel recently, and I'm not good with video, and Ryan made me feel very comfortable. Everyone in the chat was very welcoming. So if you're looking for other places to hang out and chat with people, Ryan's is a great place. I know I've recommended Ian's site, Rock Shock Pop, before as another good non-toxic place. So definitely check it out. Subscribe to Ryan's channel. It's really great content. If you're a fan of podcasts like Supporting Characters with Bill Ackerman, where he's interviewing these, behind the scenes film critics and historians and people in that industry, it's really great content. So definitely check it out.
Appreciate that.
Of course. But we are here to talk about Blu-rays that don't exist and ones that you would hope to see get a Blu-ray release. So let's jump right in. What is your first pick for your Blu-ray wish list, Ryan?
Absolutely. So I have dabbled in some sides of Asian horror throughout the years. I think that there was a time in the early 2010s to, maybe started in the late 2000s that I really started to find some of these obscure titles that really hadn't made an impact on the American shores yet. And nowadays, I am baffled that we don't have a single high-def release of Three Extremes. Now, for anybody that hasn't seen this, this is an anthology film that is just fantastic. It's unlike many of the U.S. anthology films that are more well-known, but the bigger thing nowadays is that this has literally two of the biggest names in Asian directing history with Park Chan-wook and Takashi Miike. And I'm just stunned that in 2023, we are not going back and promoting this with a high-def release at all. This is made up of 3 segments called Box, Dumplings, and Cut. And they are really well acted, very, very Asian horror, and just creepy in that simple way that Asian horror seems to always nail. A lot of people don't love anthology films, but I think this is one of the better ones, and they actually go pretty well together. And this came from, gosh, I think it was 2004 or 5. And it's funny because when they advertised this originally, it was like, hey, from these indie directors, check out 3 Extremes. And now it's Park Chan-wook that everybody was baffled was not nominated for an Oscar this year, and Takashi Miike. And then the third director is Fruit Chan, and it's a absolutely wonderful film.
Yeah, Fruit Chan's segment Dumplings actually was, I think, the next year made into a feature-length film of that segment itself.
Correct.
And yeah, that's in the book, folks, under the fetal deviations sidebar. So you can read more about it there and get on the bandwagon with Ryan's pick.
First off, I love that we're treating this book upcoming like it's the Bible. It's in the book. It's written in the book. You need to read the book.
Oh, it's the anti-Bible, but yes, it is in a way. Did you have any thoughts on like who should release this or any special features?
Yes. So when I was looking at this, I obviously jumped immediately to some people that have been hitting some of the Asian horror lately. And my first thought was maybe Error 4444 would do well with it. However, I almost think that this would do better for everybody if this went to Unearthed Films. This is maybe a little less extreme than the type of stuff that they have been putting out lately, but I still think under that banner they would find maybe a little more realistic home for it and have people jump into it that might feel better with it on their shelf. They have been doing some wonderful special features, like on their release of Untold Story, they had that Cat 3 documentary. Right. And on this, I would love, first of all, if we can get some brand new interviews with all of the directors, and Park Chan-wook especially would be probably difficult to get, but very fun to see him speak on this in a 2023 lens, with it being, almost 20 years ahead of the release. And then on top of that, I would love to see some sort of documentary on some of the up and coming Asian directors that were hitting it big around that time. And it's not something that really made its way to American shores on time. We were a little bit behind the Asian horror scene for a couple of years there. So I think the fact that we weren't in touch with that culturally, I feel like that would make a decent sort of supplemental where we could talk to maybe some of those directors that have gotten more well-known now and discuss where they came from and how it got to that point.
Great special features. I would love a documentary about that as well. What's your next pick then?
My next pick, and I'm going to lean into this because in your email you said that I could cheat a little bit, and I've cheated multiple times, as I always do. I'm going to go with a double feature for this one, and it's a little less of a cheat because it is a film and its sequel, but I think we absolutely need a Blu-ray release for the Norwegian franchise Cold Prey. They have Cold Prey and Cold Prey 2. I think the first one came out in 2007. Might have been somewhere around there, but it is this very snowy type of horror film with a group of Norwegians that go to the mountains for this big snowboarding trip. And as more tropes heavy type of story nowadays, one of them breaks his leg and they got to do something to get him to safety. But of course, it's getting dark, so they have to spend the night in this big random abandoned hotel. They find out that this hotel's been closed for decades, but they're not alone in this hotel, of course, and everything suddenly starts to fall apart. As far as I know, this was available on some random streaming service like AMC Plus or something just recently, but other than that, this is like very unwatchable in the US. Hard to track down, hard to see. I think there was a German Blu-ray release or something like that a few years ago, but even that is very difficult to find. But either way, it wasn't English friendly. It would be nice to have a very English friendly release of both of these. And I think with the success of films like Frozen from, I think that was 2010, I think that this would find a very good audience in people that are into these sort of like isolation horrors and finding a way to dive into the winter side of things that we don't get a lot, but when they hit and they hit well, they can be pretty terrifying. So yeah, Cold Prey and Cold Prey 2. These are Norwegian, and a lot of those very, random, obscure Norwegian or Swedish films, they don't always make a big leap to the United States, but it would be nice if we could get at least some of them over here. And for this one, I was thinking, what better to bring something like this to everybody than a Shout Factory? Shout Factory has been giving us some of the other more international titles as of late. The biggest example, I'm super excited that more people are going to get a chance to see Razorback that they just announced recently.
Yeah.
Razorback is beautiful, and I think this would make a very good Scream Factory double feature, and most likely because of the fact that not a lot of people are going to be super privy to the Norwegian film system or anything like that. I doubt that they would put much into the special features on this. However, I think it'd be great to have just a very fun and good time type of commentary on this. And I was thinking it would be great to have somebody like Lee Gambin from Australia head that one up and just discuss the making of the film and as much information as we could.
That sounds great. Lee Gambin's always got great commentaries. I would buy that. Come on, Shout Factory. All right. Third pick.
Third pick, I believe this one is impossible, but I'm going to keep throwing it out into the ether until something happens. And this is going to be another Scream Factory release, but I am desperate for the sequel, Stepfather 2, Make Room for Daddy. First of all, one of the best subtitles in franchise history. This is just incredible. Make Room for Daddy. Creepy as hell. Great cast on this one. We got Terry O'Quinn coming back. Meg Foster's in it. Carolyn Williams is in this. And then the tragic story, of course, Jonathan Brandis is in this as well. Yeah, this is one that I think a lot of people would like. And Terry O'Quinn, a lot of people just discovered him because of Lost.
Right.
He is one creepy bastard back in the days. I mean, in the 80s and 90s, he made some amazing films. And this is one that it's not quite as good as the first, but it is still a very fun movie. Unfortunately, I've heard that the elements are what are causing the issues with this one. So it's possible that we're not going to see this. But again, just a bonkers storyline. This basically the Terry O'Quinn escapes the insane asylum that he was in at the end of the first movie, and then he impersonates a marriage counselor to try to groom one of the patients that he's seeing and their young son, and that is disgusting, but also really, really interesting to think of seeing that in a 2023 lens. And I think that there's a lot of people that could do well to discuss this one nowadays. And one of the people that I tend to worship in the commentary field, I would love to hear Kat Ellinger give a nice, scathing commentary of this film and see what she would say about Terry O'Quinn and Meg Foster. On top of that, I would love to hear 2023 Terry O'Quinn discuss Stepfather 2 and how his life has changed in the last 35 years. This would be a fun release for Scream Factory.
Oh my God. I would love to see. I love Stepfather too. The wedding, and it just this movie goes off. It's so much fun. It's stupid. People should just watch it. If you haven't seen Stepfather 2, folks, you need to fix that.
Please do.
It's so much fun. Okay, next pick.
Next pick is from a director that has gotten a lot of love from these boutique Blu-ray labels over the last couple of years, and one that is sadly no longer with us, even though I would love to hear some updated special features from him. I'm going to go with the remake, and we're going to go with 2004's Toolbox Murders from Tobe Hooper. I adore Tobe Hooper. I love pretty much everything he's ever touched. There's quite a few of his things that we will probably never see on Blu-ray, which is sad, but there's some of them that are so well done that it's embarrassing that we did not take care of film elements better or archive things in a way that we could establish as works of art for decades. And this is one that it has gotten... I think it got part of a media book double feature with the original Toolbox Murders in Germany or something like that. But again, I don't think it was English friendly, and this just deserves better than that. On this, we've got not a great cast. We've got not a lot of well-known people, but the acting in this is very decent for the type of film that it is. For Tobe Hooper in the early 2000s and even the late 90s, not a lot of people had a huge amount of confidence in what he was doing at that time. But one thing that I wanted to throw out is there is an actor in this that was in the show The Shield, and I loved The Shield. I've seen The Shield all the way through probably 4 or 5 times. And the gentleman that was in The Shield, he played a character called Tomas. And from what I hear, he has done some not great things outside of filmmaking. Yeah. And unfortunately, that might lend some difficulty to get this released. But the film itself is very different from the original Toolbox Murders. And because of the Tobe Hooper name, I think that this would sell pretty well for a label. I would like to see this come out from somebody that would put a lot of respect into it, and therefore I'm going to shy away from Scream Factory. I would like this just to go from some of the OCN partner labels. I'm not sure which one would hit it in a decent way, but considering the fact that they've been putting out some of the more recent films, I'm going to go with something like Gunpowder and Sky. Okay. Gunpowder and Sky would probably do well to put this out and get some good special features. And one of the things that I'd like to see is a documentary on some of the lesser-known Tobe Hooper features. He did so many like made-for-TV films that I would love just to have people that could, turn on an hour-long documentary with some talking heads discussing the films and what they are about and how to perhaps watch them, and a more obscure look at his filmography, because everything else that you hear about Tobe Hooper is going to harp on Texas Chainsaw and Eaten Alive and Funhouse and Poltergeist and blah. Come on. There's so much that was in this guy's filmography that we could spend some time really diving into and just inspiring an entire generation to look even further into it.
Yeah, and especially coming off the tails of that new Texas Chainsaw release that just was announced, and so many people are involved with that. It would be nice to see some of his lesser known films, like you said, get some attention. And I will say, with regard to the actor who has gotten himself into some trouble, that, I would point folks to Ryan's conversation with Heather Drain on his YouTube channel, because they talk about, separating the art from the artist and recognizing that this one person did not make, star, edit, score the entire film. Films take a lot of people to make, and one person shouldn't hold you back from enjoying a piece of artwork, unless they're Victor Salva. But yeah, I would love to see this get some love too. I've seen some Tobe Hooper that I'm not super hot on, but I can say that for every director, like even Fulci, who I love near and dear. But yeah, this would be great to see get its own release, its own standalone one. So.
Yeah, and if you've ever wanted to see Sherry Moon Zombie in a movie that's not directed by Rob Zombie, this would be your chance.
Oh, there you go. All right, last pick, Ryan. What do you got?
Last pick is going to be my second cheater, and I'm going to go with a full-on franchise box set here. I would love to see the Cube trilogy. We've got Cube, we've got Hypercube, and we've got Cube Zero. And then on top of that, if they could throw in the remake that came out in Asia just a couple years ago, that would make this just absolutely perfect. But I am a huge sucker for the Saw franchise. I loved the premise when they announced the Escape Room film. The movie, not so great.
I was going to say, right, where are you going?
When they announced it, it sounded amazing.
Yeah.
I love the idea of seeing somebody trapped in a puzzle and needing to find their way out. It completely scratches that nerd itch of I love horror and I love Mad Libs and puzzles and word searches and all that.
Yeah.
So to see those combined in a way that's a lot more technical and well done, like the first Cube film, that is a rare type of breed in the film industry. And the first Cube film, for those that have never seen it, is a great movie. Like, this is highly rated pretty much across the board.
Yeah.
People loved this. The sequels, they didn't do as well. But this first one, really, really well made. It is like shockingly low. I don't want to say low quality, but like shockingly low budget for what they were able to pull off. And then when they got a little more money, unfortunately, it lost a little bit of its charm, like a lot of franchises do. But this one was just, it's intriguing from start to finish. And to see somebody put out a full-on box set of all three, and then again, if they can throw in that remake, it would be perfect. We don't have any of these on Blu-ray in the US. I think one of them came out in Canada a long time ago, but even that is getting a little difficult to find nowadays. And people just need to see these movies. It is something that is a cultural touch point. And for a lot of people, that the first films they saw that was kind of like this was the Saw franchise. This came out a good 7 years before that first Saw movie. So it is one that was possibly very inspiring to some of the more modern filmmakers. This, and then that movie Exam. I don't know if you ever saw that. That was a really big one for me. That one was from 2009. That's anyways, that's a tangent. This isn't my show. We'll try to stick to this. The three Cube films are very, very good. They are interesting through and through. And for a franchise box set, I feel like they would sell like gangbusters, whoever put them out. As far as who should put this out, this is an interesting one because it doesn't really fit the strict lines of many of these labels, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. But I almost feel like it would be interesting for a Kino Lorber to put out. They dabble in horror every so often, obviously, and every October they seem to really highlight a handful of really great horror films, and they've been doing some of their box sets pretty well recently. And it would be nice to see one of the, give Kino Lorber like a $25 Cube box set of all three films. They would probably sell thousands and thousands of those. These are very unique, very interesting films, and more people just deserve to see them. As far as special features, I'd love a commentary on all three. I believe the director is still around. It would be nice to hear his thoughts on the films, looking back and discussing how it was made and what inspired him and all that. So, give us some updated interviews. Give us some commentaries. I think that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I've only seen the first one, and I love it. I was talking with Lindsay, another podcaster, the other day about kind of secret handshake movies where it is a horror movie, but it also fits into other genres. And so it's one of those things where it's not that well known. It's not quite a hidden gem, but it's one of those movies where when you mention it and the other person's like, oh yeah, I love that movie. It's like you've got this kind of secret handshake with them. You're like, okay, you know what's up. You're cool.
Exactly. It's a very mystery heavy film too. That first one, it's got a lot more intrigue than a lot of films nowadays. They don't have that, sense of unknown and trying to figure out what is going on. There's just not a lot of questions by the end of the film. So yeah, Cube is great for that aspect.
Yeah. And I would definitely buy this set because I'm curious about the sequels, and I sometimes buy box sets just because I want one movie in it, and I'm willing to roll the dice on the others that are in it. So sure, I'd be down for this.
Yeah, it's again, the sequels, they kind of have that law of diminishing returns, and unfortunately they go a little wild. The second one, it's like this fourth dimension cube where suddenly physics don't apply, literally.
Okay.
And then the third one is, it's been a long time since I've seen this. I believe this is a prequel to all of them, and it's just another group of random strangers waking up with no memory to find how they got where they are, and it's just a regular cube again. And I think that's because they had to erase the whole time travel aspect of the second movie.
All of these I love. I think these are great picks. As I mentioned earlier in the episode, all of these plus all the other movies that we've talked about are going to be in a Letterboxd list on my Letterboxd profile, but also there'll be a link to it in show notes. Also in show notes are going to be links to where you can follow Disconnected, but in case people don't like to read, Ryan, tell folks where they can find and follow you.
Well, I'm pretty much everywhere. I've got my Instagram account at The Disconnected, where I share all of the announcements that are coming out, and then I've got Twitter and Facebook that you can find not only all the announcements, but I do a lot of the more show promo type stuff there. I share deals when I find them. I share stuff that are in stock suddenly that people should go take a look at if they're looking for physical media. And then if you're intrigued about this community, I've got my own Patreon where I've got a lot of people that have joined. And because of that, they have access to a Discord. And we have a very, very active Discord with so many people that are in there discussing different aspects of filmmaking, what they're watching and reviewing, sharing what they pick up, and just literally hanging out all the time. And it's been this wild ride of, I don't think anybody's going to join this thing, to suddenly having like 50 active members in my Discord and just exploding. All of a sudden, Brad Henderson from Terror Vision and used to be from Vinegar Syndrome, even he's in our Discord answering questions with people. So It's a really nice place just to hang out. And again, super welcoming. Everybody's friendly. We'd love to have you be a part of it.
Very cool. Everyone be sure to give Ryan a follow. Check out his Patreon. Check out his YouTube channel. If you're listening to any content or watching any content, if you are enjoying it, it really does help when you give positive ratings, whether it's a thumbs up or a comment or whatever that may be. And that doesn't just apply to podcasts, but to YouTube channels as well. So check out Ryan's content, give it a thumbs up. Ryan, thanks so much for coming on here and sharing your picks.
Thank you. I'm honored. I've loved Unsung Horrors for a long time, and just to be a part of the legacy is mind-blowing to me.
Oh, thanks for listening, Ryan, and thanks everyone else for listening. We'll see you back in 2 weeks for a regular episode. Bye.